This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Sign up to The Economist for in-depth curated expert analysis of world events and topics ranging from business and culture to science and technology. You'll get the weekly digital edition, online-only articles, curated newsletters on politics, the markets, science, culture and China, and full access to The Economist Podcast Plus. The Economist is independent journalism for independent thinking. Go to economist.com and get your first month free.
Diego Mariscal has one of those jobs you've definitely heard of, but you probably have no idea what he does. Diego works in Los Angeles. He's a dolly grip.
And that's the person who controls the moving platforms the camera sits on.
Diego's worked on big movies, Spider-Man, Ready Player One. On any given day, you can find him steering a telescoping crane that whizzes a camera around to get majestic wide shots.
And when I go down, the camera goes up. When I go up, it goes down. It's the best, coolest job in the world. I would like nothing more to do it for the rest of my life.
But Diego's dream job, first off, it is hard physical labor. Also, the hours are kind of nuts. 12, 16-hour days.
If you're raised into this industry, like I've been doing this since I was like 19, it's very normal. And when you see someone that doesn't work in the industry and they're just getting into it, they're like, you guys are crazy.
And then there's this. Diego looks around, and to him, it seems like landing a film crew job is just getting harder and harder. Diego knows this because a little while back, he started this Facebook group called Crew Stories. It's a place Hollywood workers can talk about what goes down on their sets. It has grown to include nearly 100,000 people. This community posts funny stuff, like the story about people mistaking a prop toilet for a real toilet. They help each other out when someone gets hurt on the job. They waited out the Hollywood strikes together. And they network.
On Crew Stories, every week for 4 months, I was doing a weekly poll to see who was working. I mean, when we first started doing them in January about like how work's been since November, it was, I think, 30% of people had 1 day at work. And the highest it ever got was maybe 60% of people that I've worked. So there's 40% of people that have not worked 1 day since the strikes ended. And this month, it was like, I remember going on the show I'm about to wrap out here in like 2 weeks. I mean, the studio was like, it was like a ghost town. There was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 shows on the entire lot. You can just go down the alleys of all the stages and just see emptiness. Usually they'd be lined with trucks on both sides and just hustle and bustle and seeing stage doors open. They're moving equipment and stuff. And it was just like dead. It was like eerie.
Today on the show, why for so much of Hollywood right now, it's quiet on the set. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Discover. When it comes to your finances, Discover wants you to know they are the credit card that is always there for you. With 24/7 US-based live customer service, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, that means no more waiting for, quote, normal business hours just to get a hold of someone. We are talking real service from real people whenever you need it. Get the customer service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. This episode is brought to you by Discover. When it comes to your finances, Discover wants you to know they are the credit card that is always there for you. With 24/7 U.S.-based live customer service, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, that means no more waiting for, quote, normal business hours just to get a hold of someone. We are talking real service from real people whenever you need it. Get the customer service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. To get to the bottom of what's going on with Hollywood jobs, I called up TheWrap's Diane Haithman. She writes about the business of entertainment and this production slowdown. It is also impacting her personally.
I do have, sitting on the side of my house right now, a whole bunch of boxes from a young producer who we know, who has, after months of telling his landlord, I'm going to be able to get work soon, don't worry about it, he's got to move back home to Louisiana with his parents for a few months to figure this out.
Wow. That's not just moving down the street, that's moving.
This same person wanted to drive for one of the food delivery services, Uber Eats or something like that. And they said, you think you could always do that, right?
Right.
Sorry, we don't have any jobs right now. And it is because right here in the San Fernando Valley, there were so many people just looking to do something until they could get their careers. I mean, we always joke about actor waiters. They exist, sure, but this was another place where you were suddenly seeing, they don't even need you to do this because there's so many people who are wandering around, trying to just hang on until things get better. It puts you in a position possibly of having to fund some speculative work. You do find some people, talking to this same young man about a production that he was on, saying, gee, this costume director, this makeup designer would never be working on this thing if it weren't for the fact that there's nothing out there right now, or that it's all slowed down.
Just how bad are things in Hollywood right now?
Well, Hollywood is still functioning.
Low bar, Diane.
You're watching TV, right? Everything's happening. I would say that what is kind of the case, and I think you hear less about it than you did right after the strikes ended, was, there was sort of a big hurrah, the strikes are over. And then what you were hearing just kind of on the street or among people who are working is, yeah, but I'm not working again yet. Here I've been on strike for all these weeks and, I owe my rent, this and that. And it's not like they immediately walked back to the same jobs they had before. Yeah,
put some numbers to that. Like, what does that mean?
During the strikes, there was a 17% drop in employment, which is pretty significant. In terms of, it's a little bit more anecdotal when you say, okay, how many people didn't go back to specific jobs? It's always been a gig economy, so it's a little hard to say.
Okay, but what are the vibes?
I would say the vibes are just very wait and see.
It seems to me like the last few years have been chaotic for the entertainment industry. Like, not that long ago, we were talking about a boom in new productions. So can you just take us back to that time, which was not that long ago?
It wasn't that long ago. The boom in production that we heard so much about was actually when the pandemic hit. Certain aspects of the entertainment industry did shut down. Theaters shut down. But
the flip side of that coin was we were all sitting in front of our TVs at home.
Yes, we were all sitting watching TV, not spending money on anything except cookbooks on how to make our own sourdough bread. And gosh, Netflix went through the roof in terms of stock and all those sorts of things because there was a sense that there was this huge demand for streaming product.
There was literally a captive audience.
Literally a captive audience. And even, honestly, even if there hadn't been a completely captive audience, it was a point at which streaming was just growing, in a huge way. So there was really this vibe that, it was a seller's market. If you had a project and you went to Netflix, they were going to hand you piles of money for it.
Did it feel sustainable to you?
No, nobody ever thinks anything is sustainable. Bubbles burst. They just do. Doesn't mean much to a happy, hopeful writer sitting in their bedroom with their script is probably not, thinking in terms of the big financial trends of how things are going to change. But it was bound to hit a wall. There's only so much growth you can have. And another interesting thing and this is not necessarily pandemic related, but certainly streaming related, is an interest in kind of global content. So all of a sudden, a Netflix could go to Korea or Africa or wherever and buy content. So a little bit of a fear of, is the industry going to stay put here in Hollywood?
When did things start to contract?
Toward the end of the pandemic. I think if you were to draw a chart, it probably would be beginning of 2022. We were starting to say, what's going on? Look at the fact that Netflix is losing subscribers. Look at the fact that people are beginning to say, hey, I'm not going to buy all these channels. I'm going to, I'm going to pick and choose a little bit more.
So you're saying like around 2022, things start to look a little shakier. And then within a year, we were talking about strikes from the Writers Guild, from the actors. How did the strikes play in to what's been going on?
I mean, the strikes, of course, the contracts come up when they come up. They don't really care about pandemics.
They're just riding the roller coaster.
Yeah, it's a bit coincidental, but certainly strikes are strikes. They shut down everything. The employment levels, of course, dropped. People didn't necessarily leave the business, but, nobody was doing anything. Shutdown's a shutdown. It is what it is.
It seems to me like the strikes ended, but Hollywood was still continuing to change. You know what I mean? The sort of what is TV question was still out there. And that's kind of part of the issue with now.
Yeah, honestly, I think this story was done during the pandemic, but I was sitting at a meeting at Warner Brothers with a bunch of executives talking about what's going on at Warner Brothers, meeting with some journalists, and noticing we're sitting here in Burbank, capital of television, and nobody used the word television at all. They just used content because we don't know where it's being consumed or any of those things anymore. It's just come to be called content.
When the strikes ended, was there an expectation from actors, writers, other people working in Hollywood generally that things would get back to normal?
Maybe I'd call it more of a hope than an expectation, but yeah, that there will be work for me after this. I mean, it didn't happen in the same way that, long ago strikes, in, was it 1987? There was a long writer's strike, but once it's over, people go back to their jobs. That was still more of a day of network television when, okay, we go back to work, we do our jobs. Our jobs are still there, as opposed to it's affecting a strike like this. Work shuts down. What's my next gig? Because production had slowed down. There's a post-strike, slowdown, and a lot of it is separate from the streaming bust, but really just has to do with this is how businesses run. If you shut everything down, it takes a while to bring it back up, and you don't want to do it if there are other strikes pending, which is true in Hollywood right now.
When we come back, the writers and actors have secured their new deals. Next to the negotiating table are crew members, but the industry-wide slowdown may make getting a contract more difficult.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
This episode is supported by FX's Clipped, the scandalous story of the 2014 Clippers owner's racist remarks captured on tape and heard around the world. The series charts the tape's impact on a dysfunctional basketball organization striving to win against their reputation as the most cursed team in the league. Starring Lawrence Fishburne, Jackie Weaver, Cleopatra Coleman, and Ed O'Neill. FX's Clipped. Now streaming only on Hulu.
So there are all these things kind of lining up against Hollywood. You think a recovery will happen, just potentially slowly. But I do feel like the unspoken question that sort of haunts this conversation is the industry, the entertainment industry, facing growing pains, or is it in a state of managed decline?
I think it's what we're seeing and what all the studies and all of that are reflecting is a shift to a more corporate world, where a greater percentage of the jobs are oriented toward the delivery of this product to a global digital world.
You mean the consolidation and the fact that, no Apple and Amazon are now entertainment companies?
Well, consolidation, which always, it does eliminate some office jobs, but just that you literally need more people to do the work of getting this production into the streaming pipeline and, to Korea or wherever it's being watched along with the United States. There's just a lot of technical work. You need more publicists to make people aware of what is happening in all of these different segments.
This is not the fun stuff. This is not the acting and the...
No, and that's where I think, people are not going to stop consuming entertainment. Therefore, I think it's a numbers game that you're just going to see more people doing the technical jobs compared to the number of people who are creators. So
actors learn to code.
Yes, they do say actors, but writers, unfortunately, learn to code.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a worry about, I don't think that we're going to see what people were a little bit worried about at first is, there's going to be these computer generated things walking around instead of real live actors. Oh, no. I think what you're hearing now more from actors, performers, Scarlett Johansson, is they're going to steal my voice and my likeness for that. These algorithms are scraping the content that's out there. And how does copyright take care of that? The one thing that I think is hopeful is it's not as though those corporate folks are now sitting in the writer's room. You know what I mean? It's not.
You still need the writers.
You still need the writers. You still need the actors. Those folks, there's more of them. And I certainly, chafe at the fact that, if I have a question in Hollywood, there are now 6 publicists that I have to circle through instead of just one. But that person is not, like I say, writing the scripts. It's not that sense of, oh no, we now have robot writing rooms, or we now have a bunch of corporate executives sitting and who are now our writers and directors and producers.
Another potential hiccup. Hollywood is facing one more contract deadline this summer, in July. IATSE, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, which represents crew members for film and TV, is in negotiations already.
We've got costumers and designer, the makeup people, hair. All those people are part of it, but also the people who just plain run cameras. And, there's all kinds of people doing.
All kinds of stakeholders.
Yeah.
What are those guys looking for, and how does that fit into this picture? Because it seems to me that right now, the importance of a good contract is clearer than ever when jobs are few. But at the same time, the fact that the strikes happened and now there's this contraction. So I don't know if it makes you stronger or weaker as a negotiator.
The worry is that it does make you weaker as a negotiator because all of these people, now it's their turn to negotiate, but they've been out of work too for a few months and are experiencing that same, we don't know what's coming slowdown.
And they're last in line.
And will they find now that the other unions who pledged their support to this group saying, hey, we're back to work, let's pressure them to make a deal. What the hope is, and what honestly, the expectation is that they won't strike, that they'll get their act together by the deadline, that they're not going to strike. However, when we talk about the slowdown, but if you're going to start a new production, you're still going to wait and see.
Oh, so it's looming over everything, the potential for a strike.
Yeah, I think honestly, that's bigger than anything else we've discussed in terms of why there's a slowdown is, but let's wait and see what IATSE is going to do.
Huh.
It's very expensive to start up a production, costs a whole lot of money to shut it down too. So why do that? Why not wait till September to start my new production as opposed to launching it in the middle of the summer and then having to shut it down? I'm not going to take that risk. Too much money involved. IATSE is probably less focused certainly on these residual issues. They're focused more on that work itself and getting good pay, good health benefits, the more typical strike issues that we're used to thinking about.
It's funny. I was going to ask you, do you think this negotiation is going to deliver another financial shock to Los Angeles? But it seems like what you're saying is it's already dealing a financial shock to Hollywood because people are just sitting out, putting new productions on the docket while they figure this contract out.
Right. And again, we know it's going to be more expensive. We know the new contracts, forget about IATSE, already are making things more expensive because production costs will go up. Anytime the cost of anything goes up, there's less of it or less people who can afford it, or big studios looking to say, how can maybe we're going to make 10 big films this year instead of 15. Some of it's just literally that. A new contract means you're going to pay people more. And what can we afford?
Diane, I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you for coming on the show.
This is fun. Thanks.
Diane Haithman is a senior entertainment business reporter over at TheWrap. And Diego Mariscal is an IATSE Local 80 dolly grip. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. Rob Gunther, who produced this episode, interviewed Diego, who you heard from at the top. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little boost from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here next time.
Anatomy of an ad.
Subconsciously trigger emotions through music. Perfect.
Define an opportunity.
Imagine talking to millions of people across the U.S. like I am now.
Identify a problem.
Creating an audio ad is time-consuming.
Offer a solution.
Utilize cutting-edge AI. Imagine creating all that in under 30 seconds. Well, we did to create this ad. To learn more about AI in the audio industry, download the white paper from audiostack.ai.
I'm Dahlia Lithwick, and I'm host of Amicus, Slate's podcast about the law and the U.S. Supreme Court. We are shifting into high gear, coming at you weekly with the context you need to understand the rapidly changing legal landscape. The many trials of Donald J. Trump, judicial ethics, arguments and opinions at SCOTUS. We are tackling the big legal news with clarity and insight every single week. New Amicus episodes every Saturday, wherever you listen.